Living in Mexico, a land of contrasts. Being born in Mexico is like living in a country full of contradictions, where everything is larger than life: the culture, the food, the fiestas, and the problems. On one hand, you've got food so good it could make you cry, and a culture so vibrant it feels like every day is a celebration. On the other, you're trying to navigate a world of cartels, corruption, and inequality, where surviving the daily chaos feels like a part-time job. The narco stereotype is your personal nightmare. The world knows Mexico for two things: tequila and cartels. The moment you say you're Mexican, people either ask if you know a drug lord or if you've ever seen El Chapo. It's exhausting. Yes, the drug war is real, but no, it's not the whole country. Yet the narco image sticks like glue, while people ignore the real Mexico, the one with incredible food, music, and landscapes. The cartels are just one part of the story, but they're the loudest. It's not just Hollywood glamorizing narcos. Mexico's cartels really do control certain parts of the country. Drug violence is a serious issue, and cartels constantly vie for control. Kidnappings, extortion, and assassinations happen almost daily, especially in cities like Guadalajara, Monterrey, and parts of Mexico City. If you live in a major city, you might feel somewhat protected, but in certain regions, the violence is so common it's part of life. Politicians promise change, but they're either too weak or too corrupt to make any real difference. Corruption is deeply embedded in everyday life. Whether it's politics, law enforcement, or business, corruption runs through every level of society. The police won't stop you for speeding unless you offer them a bribe. Government officials are notorious for embezzling public funds while citizens struggle with basic needs. They promise reform, but it's always the same, just with a new face. If you want anything done, it's usually about who you know, not what you know. Public services are slow, and the bureaucracy is more complicated than a telenovela plot. Traffic is a nightmare that never ends. Driving in Mexico is a game of survival. Roads are clogged, potholes are everywhere, and street races are common. People weave through traffic like they're in a Fast and Furious movie, only with more honking and less driving skill. Public transportation is overcrowded and unreliable. In Mexico City, the metro is often so packed, people are literally shoved into the doors during rush hour. There's always something to be angry about. Mexicans have a unique talent for complaining, and they do it well. Whether it's the government, crime, inflation, or corrupt unions, the list of grievances is endless. But the kicker: the complaints never stop. There's always a new protest, injustice, or disaster, and people hit the streets waving flags, chanting slogans, and throwing their hands up in the air. But while the protests are loud, the results are often quietly ineffective, and the cycle repeats. The system is rigged, and most people feel stuck, unable to break free. Drinking your way through life is a survival strategy. You haven't partied until you've partied in Mexico. Every region, city, and family has its own version of fiesta. But let's be honest. Most of these fiestas revolve around drinking, whether it's tequila, mezcal, or cerveza. Partying here is a full-contact sport. From quinceañeras to endless weddings to random street fiestas, there's always an excuse to drink, dance, and eat until you're too full to move. The music is always blaring, from mariachi to reggaeton, and the food is so good it becomes a crime to stop eating. It's fun, but sometimes it feels like the only way to cope with the madness of daily life is to keep the party going. The wealth gap is absurd. Mexico has some of the wealthiest people on the planet, with billionaires flaunting their massive homes in the richest neighborhoods. But just a few miles away, millions live in poverty, struggling to make ends meet. The country shows off its wealth, but hides the poverty behind it, like it's some kind of secret. You might live in a beautiful neighborhood with stunning views and fancy restaurants, but just around the corner, people are living in dirt-floor homes, unable to afford basic medicine or food. Healthcare is a disaster. If you're wealthy, you get top-tier healthcare, but if you're poor or working class, you're stuck with an overcrowded, underfunded system. Hospitals are understaffed, supplies run out, and waiting times for basic procedures can be years. Rural areas suffer the most, with people traveling hours just to see a doctor. Even then, you'll wait days for a checkup. Healthcare shouldn't be a privilege, but in Mexico, it often is. Education isn't much better. Public schools have limited resources, and teachers are often underpaid, leading to low morale. Students in rural areas often lack access to books or technology. Higher education is expensive, and while Mexico has world-class universities, only a small percentage can afford to attend them. As a result, education inequality is rampant, and many young people are forced into low-paying jobs or leave the country for better opportunities. The heat, pollution, and noise are just part of life. Mexico is known for its beautiful weather, but in cities like Mexico City, it feels like a perpetual sauna. Between the smog, traffic, and constant noise, peace and quiet are hard to find. In major cities, there's constant honking, street vendors shouting, and general urban chaos. And the pollution. In places like Mexico City, the air quality is so bad you'll feel like you need a gas mask just to breathe. But despite all this, being Mexican comes with a resilience and joy that can't be shaken. Mexicans know how to survive. They work hard, laugh harder, and always find a way to push through. It's a country where people make the best of the worst situations. Life in Mexico may be messy, frustrating, and overwhelming at times, but it's never boring. And while the problems are real, so is the spirit of the people, a spirit that refuses to quit even when the system seems stacked against them. Being Mexican means finding joy, laughter, and a reason to party, even when everything else is falling apart.